This is my grandmother. We called her Ma'am, and this is one of her recipes that had been handed down. I know this recipe is probably over 100 years old. I do it in honor of her because there was 10 brothers and sisters, and I know she had a lot more grandchildren that she probably made this for. She made it in her stack cake, and she made plenty of gingerbread for them. And she used the same recipe that a lot of her brothers and sisters and sister-in-laws and grandkids have handed down. And I think it came from her mother, which her name was Ma Kaiser, we called her. And my grandmother's name was Ella Kaiser. And we've I've had so many people ask me about this recipe that I just wanted to show you how to fix it. It was something simple, and it's printed down the way that she handed it down because, for instance, they call for a box of ginger. Well, they don't make the little tin boxes of ginger anymore. So I get my ginger from the Amish, and it's a little bit stronger, but my grandmother made it strong. And this is her recipe. It calls for 5 eggs, a box of ginger, a stick of butter, 2 cups of molasses, 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of milk, 2 teaspoons of grease, which I use. I go ahead and use um, Crisco in it, and you mix that together and you start adding your flour. And the trick is adding the flour to a consistency that you can put it out on um, a floured surface, and you can work with it to make your biscuit. It's made like a cookie, but it's a biscuit like, and it's not all-purpose flour. It's self-rising flour. She didn't use a sifter or anything. I'm thinking maybe they, back in the Depression times, they probably didn't have it. But this recipe, I just remember it as a little girl and watched her make it so many times. And she would bake it on a cold and wood burning cook stove. She had a little kitchen with a walkway out from her house, and my dad built a roof over it so when she would walk from her house out to her big kitchen, uh, which she would go every morning, and we would have to help her make a fire in that wood burning cook stove. And she'd fix a breakfast. She had a big table in there that she worked on, and a table on the back porch, where and it had a little board there that she'd done all of her dishwashing and everything out there with the dishpan. That's where her well was at, and she would bake that, and I put that in there at 350 degrees. When she did get her house, a new house, she she had an electric stove in it, and she would bake it at 350 degrees. And she always used an iron skillet. Today I'm not using an iron skillet, but it's almost just like one. I have two pans that are seasoned, and I use that in that. But I've always seen her do it in that iron skillet and make that biscuit, in there. And sometimes she would have it ready, you could smell it. We would have to walk a long way up the hollow after school, and she just knew about when us kids were coming, and she would have us some gingerbread. You could start smelling it when you come in sight from her house, and you would start smelling that. So I do it in honor of her, and I've had so many people ask me about it that I'm going to try making it today. I've already made some and gave it out, and probably going to have to make some more because so many people are asking about it. But seemed like the older she got, the stronger her gingerbread got and her stack cake. But we just loved it. We had a strong taste for that. I guess it's to where we, we didn't get a lot of sweets back then, but she, she always knew how to make us happy. So I'm going to go ahead and start the recipe up. I've got my 5 eggs here. I've got my flour. I've got my sugar. I've got my ginger. I've already got my cup of milk. I've got my molasses here. And I've already got my butter softened and got my Crisco in it. Got it softened up. I don't want it hot. You shouldn't use hot with your eggs or anything like that. But I try to mix all of the wet ingredients together real good and make sure it's mixed together. She didn't use no blender, no mixer or anything like that. She didn't have those things in her home, but she just used her bowl and a wooden spoon. I love these because it'll get out of the corners. I've used them and they're just about worn them out, but it gets, it'll get to the bottom of things and the sides. It'll scrape the sides and stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and get started and kind of show you how it's made. So I'm going to go ahead and break my eggs up in here. It calls for 5 eggs. That's 4. And this will be 5 eggs. And I'm going to go ahead and add my Crisco and my stick of butter. 2 tablespoons or 2 teaspoons, I think that's what it says. And 1 stick of butter. And I'll put the recipe at the end of this video. It is 2 teaspoons of the grease. She called it grease. And a stick of the butter. And 1 cup of milk. And I know I'm using my teacups, but I've measured it out, so it'll be right for you. And then I'm using the bacon molasses, sorghum some people call it, and I call it molasses. It calls for 2 cups of that. I don't think I can get my spoon down in there. I'm going to use this spoon that I had my butter melted in. It's important to try to use soft butter, not to be stiff. You don't want a lot of chunks in it. And I know it melts as it bakes and everything, but it's just really mixed together good. I think that's why that maybe she did that, is because she didn't have a mixer and she wanted it made, but I tried to mix that up good in it. I don't beat the eggs or anything. I just put the eggs in there with all of my wet ingredients and it'll mix up. And then I'm going to add my sugar in that. That will kind of help. 1 cup of sugar in it. It'll help break up the yolks that are in there. kind of got these eggs fresh, and boy, they are they're a mixture, I tell you. The yolks will like to stick together. Usually I use like a room temperature egg. I like using the fresh eggs out. Just makes things taste better. I guess, you know, when we were young, things tasted better than what they do when you get older. It just, that's why it brings back all the memories, you know, in it. But we got that in there. And our next thing would be our ginger. Now, I buy this from the Amish, but it says on her thing, your 1 box of ginger, I use a tablespoon, and I try to put about 4 to 5 of these in it. And it's not, you see, it's not level. I'm just kind of put that in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's more like a, I guess it's more, and I do add a teaspoon of my cinnamon in there, or maybe a tablespoon. It depends what kind of cinnamon I get. Sometimes these spices have a little bit more stronger taste than I'll put 2 in there. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Sometimes they have a little bit more stronger taste, the different kinds. The Amish does. I buy a lot of my herbs and stuff at a little Amish store nearby. It's not too far away. When I like to go there, I like to keep all my stuff stacked up, you know, stocked up and in my kitchen. That and I always get my molasses. Well, this time I got it while I was out in Cades Cove in Tennessee. They were making sorghum, and I had to get me some what time I was out there. Usually I get it in where I live in Eastern Kentucky. I can get it at Tackett's Groceries, a little mom and pop store off the way in Virgie, Kentucky. And I usually get it there, or I can get it at the Sorghum Festival in West Liberty, Kentucky. And now that I've got all that incorporated in there, and my ginger, this is a little bit darker molasses that came from Tennessee, I think. And probably what they call blackstrap molasses. And this is my flour bowl. I don't sift it or anything. She never sifted it because I guess maybe she didn't. But I start adding with 1 or 2 cups in there. 2 level cups. And I'll kind of mix that together there. And you just got to pay attention about how you're mixing your flour in to the consistency. She always made a stiff dough out of it, she called it. But it's not really stiff. It's the consistency like you were making biscuits. I'll tell you a little story about her. She was just, I mean, her nieces and her nephews, they all just loved her, loved going about her. She, married a man that she had children of her own, but she married a man that had a lot of young children. And long after he had passed away, his children would still come from out of town, from different states, and stay with her. And that's four there. That's the grandmother that they knew. They told me that's the only grandmother that they knew. And you didn't go to her house without her fixing you something to eat, or having a good laugh with her. She loved to laugh. She was a good, she had a quick wit about her, and she just wanted to make people happy. She was a good woman, and I loved my granny. I didn't call her granny, I called her ma'am. We were always taught to call her ma'am, and it was, to us, it was, I guess that's an old name. Her mommy was called Ma, and a lot of kids were, this is going to about 5 cups, and it'll start getting thick. You'll see how thick it was. I mean, it's getting, but we called her ma'am out of respect, and we would just love it. You know, she moved away years later to a new house, but oh, we would just love it when we knew that ma'am was coming to stay with us for a while. And I think her mom done that. You know, she went from child to child, or, you know, and we'll go visit with them. And she kept house. She worked for the WPA. She worked on the WPA during the wartime. And let's add some more flour. I just add enough, keep adding enough flour. It makes a big batch. And I'm thinking that her recipe was for her, because she would make stack cakes out of it. And you know, stack cakes would be, they would be high. They would be seven layers high or more. You know, some of the stack cakes would be. And you can tell it's starting to get thickened up now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with my molasses and with my gingerbread mixture. I'll put out so much out here on the, I have a little parchment paper here, a little bit of flour. I'll kind of turn it in a little bit, just so you make your dough enough to, you know, consistency enough to handle, just like you would a biscuit. So, that pan I meant to move it. And so you'll just pull a little one off there, a little bit of the, and make it into a little round biscuit. And this has already been sprayed. You know, I spray it with butter. I think that's why she used a cast iron skillet. It's already seasoned. She didn't have to use no spray or anything like that to get it off there. I do have cast iron skillets, but I'm getting older, and it's, I don't know if it's carpal tunnel in my wrist or what it is, but I'm having a problem with lifting really heavy things now. And you can tell it's not a really a real hard, stiff dough, but it's enough for you to work with. Just like a biscuit, like you were making biscuits. Pinch a little bit off. She didn't make it in a sheet pan or a cookie pan and put it out. I think it was just easier to get out of the pan like this. And I tell you, as soon as she would get it out, if we smelled it, milk, a glass of milk and a cake of gingerbread, or we called it a cake. It wasn't a gingerbread cookie as we would call it, but it was a cake, and very, very good to snack on. It's just a really good snack after walking a long way up that hollow. And as you can see, well, I thought I had, yeah, my oven's on 350 right now, and it's preheating. I'm making pretty big cookies. I've got my family coming this weekend, and they'll end up taking them a few bags home with them. And I kind of separate them out, you know, so they don't run together, my cookies. My grandkids, they love it. They've missed this year because both of them have been sick. But my grandkids love to roll it out. I just fix them a place at the table. They love to just roll it out and play with it and cut different shapes out in it and stuff. But we'll go ahead and place them in the oven. And what you do is you put it on, your oven's on 350, you put it in there, very few minutes it'll be done. You got to keep a really close eye on it. You don't want the under bottom to get real brown, just about like the top. Keep a close eye on them and check them, because you don't want to bake them too hard that they are a hard cookie. You want to make them like a bread, a soft bread. Put them in the oven there, and I'll keep a close eye on them. Now I've got my gingerbread out, and I'll show you on the bottom of them. These are hot, but I'll show you they're just barely brown on the bottom. And anything that's not the more they set, the more they'll get harder, but you can feel they're done to the touch. I've got another pan in the oven, and I'll start fixing this, but I don't put it on no under cooler or rack or anything like that. I just go ahead and put them in there in my plate and let them dry out a little bit. The process heat will make them get doner as you go along. But I'll go ahead and make me another pan. By the time that the other ones get done, these will be cool enough.